Again, how I look at ecom is the consumers having to choose between your skincare product and this skincare product. There's not much of a difference. They're really going to look at price. But if it's a new mechanism to get to XYZ, they're willing to try it. And that's what I think a lot of ecom entrepreneurs don't really understand when they're building brand is like, yes, they tried it, but now you have to continue to reinforce those beliefs that is still possible with your product suite and with your product offering. The lifetime value of ecom, the business starts once you get the first purchase. And there's a lot of work that goes into getting that first purchase, but the business starts once that first purchase.
Robert J. Miller, how are you, brother?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Good. Yeah, very, very well. And I want to say before we get into it, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. I'm really pleased we were able to squeeze this in because I know you're jetting off to the UK and then back to the US very, very shortly. So yeah, thank you for being here as a starting point.
Yeah, sure.
So Robert, I want to give everyone a brief summary of kind of your background. Maybe you can help me fill in some of the gaps, but hopefully I can get it right. You're very, very knowledgeable, and that became very apparent to me when I met you last week on not just one field, but actually multiple. And I think there's a little bit of overlap there, but with regards to crypto and finance, and then also marketing, ecom, and really bringing products to market and making that kind of thing work. Now, I think I'm right in saying that your entry kind of to the entrepreneurial space started very, very young, thanks to your older brother who kind of got you into the space, got you reading very, very early on. And not to say you had a quick win, but you had a much better turnout than most people when it comes to crypto and your first endeavor into it.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking you invested 1,500 initially and turned that into about 250K?
Yeah. So the 2015, 2016, the crypto market was booming with a bunch of new altcoins and all that kind of stuff. I happened to pick a decent one and it turned out pretty well.
Amazing. You know what? I think most people, including myself, when it comes to crypto, the first time round, it really doesn't often go that way. So props to you for buying at the right time and selling at the right time. I think that's normally what catches most people out. Sure, you can see a good opportunity, but I think a lot of people fall victim to holding. It's going to go higher. I know I did, or buying at the wrong time, selling at the wrong time. And people often say you have to kind of go through one cycle and get burnt to then be able to know what you did wrong and not do that the second time. So by this point, I'd imagine you're a bit of a whiz when it comes to crypto and finance after many years as well of studying the market. But what I like most about the outcome of what you did there was you actually then reinvested all of that money back into yourself. Or not all of it, sorry, but a large portion of it, right? Into courses, mentorship, masterminds, things like that. And I know you have a certain favor towards Grant Cardone, and we can kind of talk about how that elapsed as time went on. But you invested about 50K, I think, into knowledge, basically. So a bit like what Hormozy says, investing back into the SME 500, working on your skill set, and then applying that to businesses as you went on. So all of this was whilst you were kind of still at college, and you decided to invest a lot of your money into marketing, ecom, social media, that kind of stuff. Even in that sense, I guess you were kind of still somewhat early to the game, because this would have been about 2016, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So I don't even think, like, obviously ecom was a thing then, but like I know now these days there are a ton of different agencies and people doing social media. So I think early to crypto, maybe even early in some sense to social media marketing as well. And while you were at college, you started marketing, providing social media services to local businesses, entrepreneurs, and things like that. And then you were fortunate enough to end up actually working with Grant Cardone for a little bit while still at college, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what was your experience like there? Just a little piece of kind of what that was like, because you were learning social media, you were going to masterminds, you were working for Grant Cardone while still at college, and you hadn't even got your degree yet, right?
Correct. Yeah. So first off, you've done a lot of research, obviously, on me, so appreciate that. And secondly, it's even crazy to hear it, hearing it back when someone's researched kind of the chain of events that have happened and occurred since, I got into entrepreneurship. But when I was getting into that social media marketing agency kind of deal and, going through courses and programs for it, what I realized was that my market was very limited. So I grew up in a town called Simi Valley. It's out in California, just north of LA. Very suburb, very construction, very nurse, very cop kind of oriented and career focused. And I didn't really see a future in any of that. The only thing that I really saw a future on kind of in that realm was military, because my grandpa was in military. I'm from a bit of a military background. So when I was getting into this digital thing, like no one really around, whether it was crypto or even social media marketing and ads, really knew what that stuff was. So looking back, the only way out that I really had was connecting to people that understood that concept. And so when I was in college, I went to a community college first, and I was in the transition of going to a university. And that's when the opportunity came that he had a social media marketing agency going. And I had a portfolio of my own stuff that I built for my personal brand with crypto, built some stuff for some buddies of mine and some other entrepreneurs. So when I submitted all that stuff, it was kind of a shoo-in. But I just saw it off of an Instagram story, DM'd, I think it was Frank Kern, got on, went through the whole process and got the job. So that was in the summer, I think, of 2019. And from there all the way till about December 2019, I was with Cardone.
And I think you said that actually kind of led to a bit of burnout, right? Because you were managing ads for them, probably millions of pounds in ad spend. You were at college, as well as maybe also serving some of your own clients outside of that, or helping friends and things like that. So it actually put you off marketing for a little while, didn't it?
Yeah, I almost quit marketing entirely. I almost retired at 19 or 20 from marketing. But yeah, I was doing full-time in college. And because they were East Coast, I was in LA. So I was doing 5 a.m. till about 1 Pacific time for Cardone and their group. And then I was doing school from about 2 to 3 o'clock all the way through to about 10.
Wow.
So on top of those, time obligations and stuff, I was working out. I had a girlfriend at the time that obviously did not work out. And I just had other responsibilities that I was taking on. Because when you're a college kid, you have the energy for it. Didn't do any partying, didn't do any frat house stuff, didn't do any of that stuff. It was all business, work, and, doing everything that I could with Cardone.
Amazing. And then you said that ended in about December. You then went on, not to say reluctantly, but you then started a business with a friend of yours who really wanted to get into marketing, and you tried convincing him otherwise, and then we're like, okay, let's just do it together. And that was the start of, it wasn't creator ads at that point, was it? Or
no. So I've had multiple agencies over the course of past 4 or 5 years or so, a lot of service-based businesses. But yeah, so he was just starting out. Like just bought the Ty Lopez course. Yeah. And I had just been through the ringer. I went from running ads to then managing, I think it was like $3 million a month in ad spend across like 89 clients. Again, this is all while I'm in college. And then I actually transitioned from doing the marketing and the marketing strategy to trying to help clients on the front end and communicate marketing strategy, be kind of an account manager on top of all the other responsibilities. Wow. And so I experienced every single facet of an agency, really. So he was like, yeah, I want to start a social media marketing agency. We want to drop ship like pet products and whatever. And I was like, dude, you don't even know the half of like marketing right now. That's okay. Yeah. But I just went through the ringer, man. So like, let's just partner up. You're good at selling. You're good at like hyping, the experience that I have up. I was very introverted at the time because I was just behind laptop, thinking through calculations and pattern recognition and basically being a day trader. Gary V calls it day trading attention. I was literally doing that at some of the highest levels for ecom and for lead gen and all this other stuff. So he did sales, I was doing fulfillment, built the agency. And then since then, I actually merged that one, and then we sold some of the contracts off on that one. Then I started another one. And then now I'm actually out of the agency game, and I'm just solely focusing on my own offers and businesses.
Yeah. So maybe we could just touch on them briefly and then really kind of get down to the nuts and bolts of it. So do you want to touch on ARC and also what you're doing in finance? And then we can kind of get on to really how people can learn from you and bring products to market, scale them using funnels, build teams, automate, and actually take something from kind of zero to, the heights that you've taken things.
Yeah, for sure. So I still love ecom. So whether it's D2C, whether it's wholesale, like with what we do at ARC, I still love moving products. I mean, it's the backbone of the American economy, right? Everyone needs the product. Everyone needs diapers. Everyone needs coffee. Everyone needs something to hit their goal, right? And that's one thing that I always like to talk about, especially with go-to-market strategy, is people are always going to buy a new mechanism to get the same result that they tried. So if you ever think of fat loss products or weight products and stuff, they're always going to look for the newest thing that's either more convenient or some new mechanism that will get them the six pack or that will get them whatever, right? The biggest thing right now is peptides. The next big thing will be something else. The next big thing will then be like this biohacking stuff. It's cold plunge extreme, like whatever the next thing is. There'll always be a new thing that'll catch a trend, or there'll be a new thing that gets them the result. So whether it's ecom or whether it's, even finance, that's how markets work and evolve. So with finance, with what we're doing there, I have a software company. We develop quantitative trading algorithms. And that is a new mechanism under the alternative investments route that allows people to have a better return on their capital than just investing in the stock market or just investing into a real estate property. So all of these things kind of coincide with my overarching brand, which is, hey, I want to build digital cash flow so I can build digital wealth. So take the income from ecom, take the income or the investment portfolio returns from an algo, either invest it into more crypto or double down on the one that's working best for you.
Yeah, amazing. So there is a kind of a lot of overlap there. And like I was saying, I think we can almost take people on a journey and touch on finance at the end, because finance is a massive part of building businesses and then reinvesting cash flow or getting investment to actually build teams and structures and things like that. But maybe we could kind of take it right back to the start and speak about if you were to kind of launch a product, whether that be info or D2C, although they are slightly different, and bring something to market. Where would you start? Maybe with like the ICP or target demographic and truly understanding the wants, needs, or desires and pain point of the person that you're going to market to, really getting into that mind frame of who they are and then building the product off the back of that, or maybe even the other way around, building the product and then trying to identify the market who it actually serves best.
Yeah, for sure. And I think given the current landscape, I think it's even worth mentioning, like, how do political campaigns work? If you really think about it, it applies to e-commerce, it applies to info products, everything that the politicians actually promote, all can get broken down into demographics, avatars, the language that people used when they communicate about their pains, about their wants, their desires. And even if you take it a step further, which I had to do specifically when looking back at my lineage, specifically looking back at things that have worked well and why people believe the way that they believe, is what propaganda have they embodied from prior campaigns that have happened in that market. So if we look at politics, obviously the right side has an agenda, the left side has an agenda, and it's been reinforced over a period of time. So if I was to insert myself into something like that, that has a big foothold and a big stronghold of hammering your ICP with indoctrination and messaging of a certain type, I have to figure out how I can make mine either align with that or be a different mechanism than that. So when I look at e-commerce specifically, if I look at weight loss, because it's kind of easy for people to recognize it there. If I look at weight loss, people have been pitched keto. People have been pitched V-Shred or whatever that guy's name is. People have been pitched Kino Body. These different ways to achieve the six-pack result without actually having to do a lot of workouts or change their diet rigorously. So if you look in the past, you can kind of see what angles we're working with them, and you can choose to either reinforce that and just be better. So pick off where they kind of dropped off and reinforce those beliefs are still possible, or switch the mechanism and that it's better than the prior methods. So if I look at skincare as another example, I had a huge beauty brand that I had worked with. And if you look at everything in a traditional sense, they always talk about, your skin looking a certain way, fitting into certain crowds, but not a lot of people, at least with this brand that we were working with, were highlighting the insecurities and touching on the pain point of, like, this is the thing that's holding you back from being your natural feminine self. So what we crafted there and the go-to-market strategy for that was to unleash what's underneath. And that brand was underneath skincare. So there's little plays on words that you can do, but what you're selling is the psychology of the belief that they can obtain that result. And so long that your product or service is actually obtaining that, then you have no problem to use those kind of tactics. So again, how I look at ecom is it's either reinforcing the old way and it's just a new package, a new design, et cetera, or it's a new mechanism. And the ones that have new mechanisms are the ones that typically go further, because if you just reinforce a prior belief, you're not really changing anything. The market's already there, and the consumer is having to choose between your skincare product and this skincare product. There's not much of a difference. They're really going to look at price. But if it's a new mechanism to get to XYZ, they're willing to try it. And that's what I think a lot of e-com entrepreneurs don't really understand when they're building brand is, like, yes, they tried it, but now you have to continue to reinforce those beliefs that is still possible with your product suite and with your product offering. So the lotion, the skincare, the mascara, whatever, people want to do for their skincare lines, the lifetime value of e-com, the business starts once you get the first purchase. And there's a lot of work that goes into getting that first purchase, but the business starts once that first purchase occurs.
Yeah, I think you just dropped a huge amount of value there, especially into kind of the psychology behind it. I've never heard anyone compare it to politics, which I really liked the analogy. Not that I really keep up to date with it as much as I probably should. But yeah, very interesting to see it from that side. And as well, talking about kind of getting that first sale, I think if you haven't done ecom, a lot of people probably don't appreciate the amount of work that kind of goes into doing that. And to hear that first cha-ching or see that first sale come through after all the marketing efforts is always a really nice feeling. But how do we get to that point? How do we get that first sale? So we understand now who we're marketing to. We've got to build the product or the mechanism around that. How do we then apply what we've learned in our market research and what the data is showing into the funnel and start kind of crafting that to then essentially get it out to market and work towards that first sale?
Yeah. So with ecom, everything is digital for the most part. If you're talking about marketing campaigns, yes, you can do, brand partnerships, partner up with the gym to carry your product, that kind of stuff, just build some foot presence. But if you're trying to compete in digital, the reason why I brought up politics is because that's who you're competing against. Like the most recent headlines are pretty insane. So how are you going to get that attention when that was a historic moment that just occurred, for at least US politics? You're also competing against people like the Kardashians and all that kind of stuff that can get that engine behind them to give them the attention. So some people don't even think like they don't even know who their competitors are. Competitors aren't the competing e-commerce skincare company. It's the attention mechanism. So sometimes orienting your focus to where attention is going, like you said, with brand research or market research, here's what the market's telling us. It's not just incubated in that market of skincare, for example. It can be cross-pollinated with different things, which allows you to create a new creative that goes viral organically, or it allows you to tie that into your mechanism and you get free distribution. So when it comes to how the funnels work, the difference between someone doing a high ticket service offering, which is usually what I do. A lot of people that I've worked with, I've consulted on offers to help scale them to, 7 and 8 figures and that stuff. I've mostly looked at it from a high ticket space. So if you guys aren't familiar, people who hit a landing page, they watch some sort of video, they book a call, and there's an over the phone sale, offline conversion event. When someone does that type of mechanism, the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is the landing page. Everything underneath is your sales processes, all the scripts that you have for each part of the sales process, the objections, and mapping your sales argument. So that way, when they occur on the sales call, the sales rep has the proper communication, the right messaging to overcome that. Now, there's obviously basic sales skills, but for the most part, they all fall under 4 main categories. Hey, it's not the right time. I'm not the decision maker. I have the wrong product, or I can't afford it. The price. Those are the 4 main objections. And so when you script out that stuff from a sales perspective over the phone, it's how do I see the real objection behind what they're telling me to actually solve that problem? And then you guide them whether or not your service is the right service. Be ethical with it. Ecom, that same level of granularity has to occur because your landing page is your sales team. Your email marketing flows post pop-up opt-in is your sales team. Your retargeting ads is your sales team. And quite frankly, you may not know exactly what objections are resonating right away, but if you map it out and you create the same creative, but the difference being what the problem or what the product solves, what problem is it solving, over and over and over and over and over, you'll then be able to see which one is resonating most. So one of the best examples, because AG1 is killing it right now, is their product, their main green supplement. If you go on to Facebook ad library and you see all their retargeting images and videos, they probably have 10, 20 different ones at any given time, times the 6 objections that they run into. So 25 times 6, that's how many creatives are going out. Now they'll optimize, they'll turn ones off, they'll turn other ones on, etc. But they do that on Google, they do that on YouTube, they do that on GDN, they do that on Facebook, they do it everywhere to really see what people are resonating with on each platform. So if you come in from an ad that talks about gut issues and you get hit with this is going to solve your gut problem, this is going to give you less constipation, this is going to give you a flatter stomach, those are 3 things that are to the gut video. Versus if I wanted to have all my vitamins for having less degradation in the way my skin looks, well, then I may talk about collagen. I may talk about other things behind that because that's where they came in and that's what they resonated with. So ecom, the landing page and the first creative is the tip of the iceberg. Your ability to meet the customer with where they're at in the buying cycle and the customer journey will determine how effective your ads and the return on your ads really is. So if you map it out from that perspective and treat your creatives and your marketing for ecom like a sales team and actually put in that effort into the graphic, into the animation, into the creativity behind it, then you'll get the results.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Treat your landing page and your creatives like your sales team. I never really looked at it in that sense, but you're so right. That is obviously all of your marketing efforts to get people back to the page to get them to convert. So again, I like that analogy. Now, I think what we keep coming back to here is really the psychology and of course, obviously the ICP. So even if you are sending traffic to a page, whether that be ecom or info, you need to acquire and gather as much data as you can from that. And I know you're big on gathering data and looking at leading metrics and things like that. So let's assume by now then you understand your target demographic and your ICP. You're pushing traffic to the page, whether that be ecom or taking sales calls, if it's info or a high ticket info. What's the best way to track all of those metrics to find the drop-off point to see where you need to optimize?
Good question. And this is going to get very fundamental and very granular really quick. And a lot of people, they overlook this stuff, especially agencies. Like I was talking to a buddy of mine, which is actually how we met. He was saying like the agency didn't even know how to configure the funnel, like didn't know what metrics to look at, even though they're an ad agency. And so that's a common problem because people think that distribution and the way that we click buttons in the platform is the actual value, not the value. It's commoditized. Creative agencies are commoditized. Advertising agencies are commoditized. Why? It's because they're one piece of the entire equation that is the business. So you may have a marketing entrepreneur like myself. I'm kind of like a marketing entrepreneur I'm like everything, honestly. But from a high level, marketing is its own department. Sales, operations, client success, product or service fulfillment, whatever that is, and then your finances, right? Those are the main verticals. So when people look at it like, oh, I have a marketing issue or a sales issue, it's like, okay, if that's the issue, then map out everything that you have. So, okay, how many clicks do you have? What are your CPMs? How much distribution did you get with every single metric? And stock out of the box, Facebook gives you some basic metrics, but you have to like take all of that and widen everything. So what is your hook rate? What is your hold rate? That's a 3-second interval and a 15-second interval. Then you look at the percentages of that in correlation to the actual amount of money you're spending to it. So if I'm getting a 20% hook rate versus a creative that's getting 40% hook rate and they're the same duration of time, well, I just doubled the flow to the business because I focused on the minute metric that actually drives everything forward. So creative agencies don't look at that a lot of times. Ad agencies don't look at that. And if you're a marketing entrepreneur, an ecom entrepreneur, and you don't know what to call out, you can waste a lot of money really quick. So we extrapolate everything. So when I'm talking, CPMs per ad set, what's actually occurring there. Then we look at the creative, hook, hold, retention rate. Then obviously our click-through rates and the performance of the video, how much 100% video views cost, how much 50% video views cost, 25% video views cost. Compare that to different strategies on, media and images, et cetera. And then you look at the landing page. So if I have a e-commerce brand, how well is that product page converting? Is it higher or lower than 1, 2, 3%? 3% is decent. 1% is kind of average in the industry, but you don't want to be average. So you want to try and get 2, 3, 4, 5%. Now you may not get that when you're targeting everyone in the world to go to one page, but that's why you have to have all these different pages that meet people where they're at. And it's a lot of work, right? So the first phase is obviously getting something to work, and then you make these changes. So when you look at, like for a sales funnel, for example, you have to then look at the metrics in percentage correlation to each other. So click to app, click to book, click to show, click to contract, click to, one deal. And you can look at the percentages of how well your marketing is converting from the beginning point all the way to the very end point. So if you do that for ecom, organize all your assets and then see the conversions of that. And when you do that over and over and over, your 2% bump in something makes a big deal. Your 5% bump or your 5% increase in click-through rate because of the format of the email actually matters and it brings revenue. So first you got to get a baseline assumption. We do everything through spreadsheets for like the overarching view. With sales processes that are over the phone, it's a bit easier than ecom, I will say, because ecom, everything's digital and there's a lot of click attribution that gets appropriated and stuff. But if I go through, I have all the data coming from Facebook on my media. I'm then able to take that conversion data and look at my landing page, maybe look at the VSL on there, maybe look at the button conversion on there, how many applications, like those are different softwares a lot of the times, or it's an all-in-one software that tracks all that. And so it spits out data. So it's easy to make those percentage conversions between each step. Whereas with ecom, it's a little bit more granular, and people like to use tools like Triple Whale or any one of these creative analysis tools, but they're not looking at the entire funnel. So a creative may be getting a certain percentage click-through rate and may have the highest ROAS. But is it actually, or is it that gets the most email opt-ins and then your email flow is attributing to it and it's all happening within X amount of time? So what if you increased you're getting great traffic, but what if you increase the open rate by 10%, which then, trickles down.
Yeah.
So it's just getting very granular with where that customer journey is. Sales processes that are over the phone, you can kind of track that a bit easier. Ecom, you just have to get very granular with your tech stack and also identify like, how am I going to be looking at this data and create a change log? So that way, like, what was I thinking? Similar to how people do trade journals in finance. I mean, we have trading softwares and all that kind of stuff. So the manual way to trade is to have a trading journal. What was I thinking? What made me make that decision? And was I right or wrong? Did the percentage go up? Did my profits go up or did they go down? And was there some anomaly that I didn't consider or factor in? And did I even overthink my trade position? So same thing happens for ecom with each and every single one of these steps in the journey.
Yeah, I think it's just being data-driven and logical. But like you mentioned, it's not, well, I can't speak for all agencies. It's not actually that common for them to do data analysis. Like, yes, you can say, we're a data-driven agency, which is what we say. And I like to think that we do it to a degree. We export all of the data from Google or Meta using supermetrics into Sheets, tracking a lot of the metrics that you're talking about. Even then, it can get very complex. And I wouldn't even say we do it to the degree that you're talking about. But for ecom, we certainly do it. And then you can track click-through rate, conversion rate, landing page views, all of these things, and actually start to optimize the full funnel. Whereas a lot of people, when they say I'm a social media marketing advertising agency or a data-driven agency, really what they're referring to is the fact that they just use a platform and optimize based on the data in the platform. But like you said, there's a lot of holes in that data with regards to attribution and tracking, and you're not looking at what's happening on the back end. So if you're advertising on multiple platforms, really you should be looking more of like a cash in, cash out perspective, looking at MER and trying to extrapolate all of that data as best as possible. It's not easy, but as best as possible, and actually analyzing from the full funnel effect of multiple different platforms.
Well, and to your point, I don't even think it's the marketing agency's job to do that full in-depth analysis, because a lot of times, at least in my experience, the agency is only going to have X amount of visibility. Now, why is that? A business owner is typically looking to hire an agency because either A, they need to remove that from their plate and they're a wizard with ads and all that kind of stuff and they don't have the time to do it anymore because the business needs other things. Cool. Those types of entrepreneurs will obviously have a higher standard, but they will probably have the insights that a marketing agency is looking for. Versus the person that hasn't run social media before, maybe they just do a bunch of organic and their income's super volatile and they want ads to make it a bit more of a, streamlined, consistent process. The ones that don't have that experience are going to ask the agency to give them all the insights where, like I said, you have marketing, sales, operations, client success, product fulfillment, service, and finance as your verticals. They are responsible for their operations, and operations is the aggregation of data to serve marketing, sales, and in an e-commerce perspective, operations of the product operations, like actually getting inventory moving and that kind of stuff. So if they're missing that operational component, they will continue to rinse through different agencies thinking that the new agency is going to solve their problem, that the next marketing agency needs to have better creatives or whatever the case is. And it's a constant loop that you find e-com entrepreneurs in. So they have to level up. Like if you're an e-com entrepreneur, you got to level up and not expect so much from the agency because it's your business and it's your responsibility. You have to understand ops and finance more and more. So for example, one of the brands I was telling you about, we scaled them from, they had done about $1 million in the past 12 months. And they came to us and they said, hey, We want to scale this out, blah, 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 blah. And we had a rev share deal with them along with retainer. We scaled them out. We went from 1 million to 5.2 million within 7 months working with them. We did our financial mapping from our perspective as to why we would even do a rev share deal in the first place. What assumptions must be true? Are we above or below those KPIs? Because we have a rev share, right? So we have that interest to look at it from our perspective. And you got to be careful who you're working with, because if they're not transparent in that, you can miss out on a lot of money. So what we did, we scaled them up to 5.2. And we said, hey, our rev share per our agreement is about 187 grand here. We've already had our base retainer for 7 months, but we understand the first quarter, you may not be able to get that because you got to reinvest. Like, I totally get that. But let's start making some payments here, because this is what, we're owed. We just 5x'd your business in 7 months instead of $1 million in a year. Like, let's get some money. And they were unable to fulfill on the contract. So we lost 187 grand. We fired them as a client, said, hey, we can't work with you that way. What we came to find out was, one, their negotiations with their suppliers were dog shit, like absolute trash, meaning that their accounts payable was 7 days. And when you think about that, if you're not familiar with what accounts payable is and everything for ecom, your whole job and the whole success of an e-commerce business is driven on the negotiation with your supplier. If I can have a net 30 term, meaning if they will ship out products on the first day of the month, I can pay them the next first of the month. I have 30 days for any product that is being shipped out here to then pay off that inventory. So suppliers run on that type of basis to give you, as the entrepreneur, as the marketer, as the sales guy, whatever, the time to collect the money for that. So if you interrupt that cycle and you bring your accounts payable to 7 days, like this particular client, every Friday she was sending them money via Zelle, not on a credit card either, like just cash in, cash out. That eats away at the potential of not only the returns that we're making on the ad spend side, because you're sending out money too quick, but number two, you're not getting enough leverage with your suppliers, because if you buy in bulk, you obviously bring those costs down. So she didn't negotiate with the suppliers, meaning that she probably could have even got bulk discounts and net 60, meaning that we have an entire quarter to have this revenue machine grow, get all these orders in, and then have them start fulfilling and pay in lump sums. And I kind of go through that depth just to illustrate the importance of e-com entrepreneurs leveling up, because they may work with a great marketing agency like yourself or whoever, right? But if they don't understand how to operate or how to negotiate the back-end fulfillment, you are going to be held hostage to the level of growth that entrepreneur goes through. And it's the same thing with high ticket offers. It's the same thing with info product offers. And the reason why there's a big attrition rate in agency land is because either the entrepreneur isn't willing to grow up, the agency isn't willing to have the conversation, or the agency is just solely focusing on media and advertising, saying, oh, I'm doing my job, everything else is on you, guy. But there's no aligned growth incentive.
Yeah.
And the agency can bring a lot more value than the entrepreneur in a lot of cases that has the e-commerce business, because marketing and sales is the hardest part.
Yeah. It becomes almost like a finger pointing exercise, doesn't it? If the two sides aren't aligned.
Exactly.
And it can be difficult, speaking from an agency perspective, but also having an ecom background, although I never outsourced anything to agencies because I was doing the marketing myself. Of just trying to navigate, like, from an agency perspective, where you draw the line. Because like you said, it's not even necessarily the job of the agency to be exporting all of those metrics and relaying it to the client. But I always find when we're providing a service, clarity can be found in the numbers, and that brings peace to the client's mind when they understand the numbers. I feel as though there's only ever kind of chaos or confusion when they don't truly understand. And if things are broken down in a very, I wouldn't say simple or easy to understand way, because sometimes when you export all of this data, it can be a little bit confusing, especially from a client perspective. But if you can walk them through, like, look, this is what you're spending on the front end, this is what we're generating on the back end, this is everything in between, this is where you're strong, this is where you're weak, I think it provides a sense of clarity in that they have a trust in us and our ability and what we're doing, and then shows them what they need to be doing from their perspective. So we kind of draw the line there, like, we're going to control everything in the ad account. We're going to show you everything and provide you hopefully with clarity on what you need to be doing. But there is still a sense of responsibility on you as the business owner to level up these lagging metrics or where the holes are in this.
Yeah.
So I would say that's one thing that's really difficult as an agency, is just drawing that line. Because you're managing many different clients and you kind of overserve to one, it pulls away time that you've got for everyone else. So it can be a bit of a balancing act sometimes.
Well, it's also what the entrepreneur that has that e-commerce business got started. Like, why are they even doing the e-com business? Why are they even trying to hit a revenue target? It's deeper than that conversation, which I've come to learn. And a lot of times, like, yeah, we'll do the financial mapping. That's going to happen. That's like a tactic. Like, yeah, we have to do that or else we're just going to crash into a wall. But like, what is this business trying to do for you? Like, what is it trying to serve? And I've found that and this is also with building a team, like if you tie it to their personal, professional, financial goals, you don't get blindsided by their judgment, but they also have to trust you in that. So when you obviously are the agency, you have the leverage and you position yourself like, hey, dude, we got money. We got clients. Like, I don't need your money. Like, I'm not here to grow your brand so that I can get fucked over and waste my time and money. Like, let's get real for a sec. Why do you have this business and what revenue targets are you trying to hit? Great. What's the real reason why you're trying to hit the revenue targets? And quite frankly, not a lot of e-com entrepreneurs get asked that question because everyone's behind the computers. So it's confrontational in a way, but it's in a constructive way in order to say like, hey, when you hit $1 million, that's not the the success goal. Like, it's just a milestone. It doesn't mean that now you're financially free, because $1 million in e-com predicated that you have 20 to 30% cost fulfillment on that, 40% marketing costs. You're already at 20 to 30% in gross profit, not even the reinvestments and the innovation of your products and stuff. So you have 200 grand to work with on $1 million, and you have to live. So let's say your cost for living is 80 grand, like the median salary in America. Cool. You have 120 grand left over. Was that the success that you thought about? Oh, by the way, we didn't even talk about taxes. So you got to pay, let's say, another 40 grand in taxes. Cool. You have 80 grand left over. Okay. Now that we're on a real basis conversation, can we talk about elevating this and hit 10 million so that number actually makes sense? Cool. Because a lot of people will self-sabotage if they haven't hit a number, and then they're going to feel like, oh, I started this. They don't deserve it. I'm the one that started, and they get an ego. But again, it depends on what market you're trying to serve. If you're serving entrepreneurs that are in that 30 to 80K range in e-com, they have to grow through that. And it's an honest conversation. It's probably media that you guys can develop and even give them some more education on, but they have to be willing to go through that development. I've had agency clients come to me for high ticket stuff or e-com stuff. I give them every tactic, deploy all the resources, write their script, everything. But they aren't embodying it. And I'm not saying I'm 100% right all the time, but the point I'm trying to make is if they don't see themselves at the standard that you have for your client base that you want to work with, your ICPs, then there's more friction than someone that already gets it.
Yeah. I would love to repeat the quote that I learned from you right at the start of your video, which deserves a lot more views on YouTube, by the way, which is how to 5x your revenue in 2024. The very first slide, you repeated a quote, which I've since watching that video repeated multiple times already. And it's about positive and negative thoughts. Do you recall the quote?
Yeah. Whether you think that it's going to, actually occur, or whether you think that it's not going to occur, you're right. So you have to check your mindset before making any investment or any initiative-based decision.
Yeah. And I wrote that quote down, and I have like a Notion doc of just quotes that I like and who said it. And I don't even know if that's something that you've found somewhere else or that you're repeating, but I really, really like it, and it resonates with me. And I think it speaks a little bit to what you were just saying there. Like, you could give someone absolutely everything, but based on what their perceived thought is on that as to whether or not it will work and whether or not they actually go through with it and test it and rely on the data, could massively implicate how well it's going to kind of work out, right? If they're reading that script but they don't have conviction in it, it's probably not going to work, So I think that's such an important thing, and it's something I'm really trying to work on at the moment, is really training my mind and just remove any kind of inch of doubt or even just negative thought, and just being very mindful of any time that anything like that even starts to come into my head, just to kind of push it away and be very careful how I say things and speak of myself, even in my thoughts. So it's something that I've kind of been working on anyway, but that was also a nice reminder for me. I just wanted to add that in there because one, plug in your YouTube channel because the video is great.
Thanks.
And I liked how you started with mindset rather than just going straight in, because I think it's also really important. I'm going to segue a little bit, if you don't mind, because I think we've kind of gone deep on the analytical side of things, which I think is great. Every ecom business needs to understand that. And I think it's something often overlooked is finances, because that can make and break your business. Even just not necessarily ecom, but any business, right? When it comes to cash flow, credit terms, money that you have available, taking on credit, all of these things, as well as like then using that money to ultimately buy back your time, which I think every entrepreneur gets to this point. We only have 24 hours in the day. How you choose to maximize that is up to you. Some people are more efficient than others, but something again I'm also working on, and I feel like I'm getting better at it, but I know I could be so much more efficient, is leveraging automation, outsourcing, and things like that. What are your thoughts on that, and what's maybe the best way to go about it? It doesn't even necessarily have to be just ecom, but when it comes to trying to automate parts of your business, how do you best decide what things you should be doing, where to start automating, and where to start outsourcing? And like, how do you know when's the right time to do that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a very important part of business in today's world. I call it the modern way of doing business. It's, you got to have a designed lifestyle as to how you want to live, what things you actually accept to be true. So similar to the thoughts and beliefs that you have. First, start with, what do you believe to be true and what do you believe to be possible? You feel like you have to grind 20 hours a day? If you believe that, then you will do that. I'm not saying go 4-hour work week, because I love to work, but what's the magnitude of the impact of the work? So first, start with the designed lifestyle that you want. Your ticket out, your freedom, is digital leverage. How can you have one thing do 90,000 other things that you don't have to do? Interesting. You have to apply that to your business, but there's a lot of growth associated to that. So a lot of times, I'm not even the best at doing the team building side. I have a big team, but there's companies with thousands of employees, and like, I'm not there yet. I'm a small fish, right? But the way that I've gotten to where I've gotten is specifically focusing on digital leverage. Because there are sayings out there now, especially with this whole AI boom, that there'll be billion-dollar companies with one person. Well, why? It's not because the learning language model is that great. It's not because that the hardware is so special. It's not because any of that. It's because once AI becomes integrated into workflows and automations, the problem solving and the technical gap will be filled. Once that technical gap is filled, it'll make it very easy and streamlined to be able to do those functions how they need to be done. And depending on the software stack that you're using, if they adopt the AI, they can build better bridges. So what I mean by that is, when you have digital leverage, if I click a button in my CRM and it drags from point A to point B in a pipeline, what occurs when that happens? Am I getting the data points pushed out? Am I getting the contract sent out? How much time do sales reps spend on actually sending out contracts? A shit ton. So it's either an automation issue or you haven't productized the service enough. And the product, which is the entrepreneur's responsibility to build, hasn't thought through how to have the same activation points, the same level of service, and the same type of mapping that every single client that comes through on this particular package experiences. The custom ones are a little bit different, especially if it's a bigger client. But if you can have a productized service, then that means that you can productize your automation to send out a productized service contract to then have all the other things occur on your behalf. Reminders, follow-ups. And then the sales rep obviously still has the human element to it. But sales reps just want to sell. They don't want to do admin shit. So if I can eliminate 99.999% and just say, hey, drag the button here and click this button to do the administrative functions that it would have taken either an assistant to do, would have taken multiple hours, or compounded definitely multiple hours a week for the sales reps to do. If I eliminate that with just better thinking, then I just created the time disparity and I get the time back. And if I do that and it impacts 10 salespeople and it was 2 hours a week, well, I just got 20 hours back from an hour of thinking of how does this get done. And now they can spend 20 hours more closing deals.
Yeah.
So it's those constraints is what digital leverage is supposed to solve. So how can one thing multiply and impact 10 or 15 other functions down the road? And where a lot of people stop with this, sales call comes in, creates an automated deal in the pipeline. Cool. That's an automation. Cool. Hey, I just sent out the contract. Cool. But what about all that data that then pushes through? That way it impacts your fulfillment better, your client success better, your finance better, and then gives you a summary of your marketing campaigns looking through all of the divisions. That is needing infrastructure at each department to be able to catch everything. So some people will set up a Zap for spreadsheet push and blah, 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 blah. Cool. You're like halfway there. It's the right thinking, but you can go very granular, very quick. So I remember one time for myself, this was at the beginning of one of my businesses. I did not have enough time to take sales calls. And if you were a client of mine during this time, I'm about to, spill the beans here. I built out basically a conditional system inside the CRM where if I just clicked a button, it did all my communications to them. It did follow-up sequences, follow-up emails. It did it at different times of the day, different hours with my language, This is before AI was really a thing. And it was this massive conditional logic lucid chart, basically, of just communications, triggering this to trigger this. If they don't do this, then it actually mimicked a human. And I'm not an engineer. I just understand the value of the time. So I look at everything as, okay, if I'm going to roll out a new product, if I'm going to roll out a new service, if I'm going to roll out a new go-to-market thing, let's say everything is successful, front end, and I get the order. What happens back end for myself? What happens back end for my team? And then what also happens back end to the prospect or to the client? And if they don't purchase, well, then I have to create that organism and ecosystem for email marketing, SMS marketing, follow-up calls, sets, that kind of stuff. So it's that same thinking between each one of those departments that gives you the digital freedom to then hit to my third point, which is a design legacy. I don't have to show up for my biggest company right now in a lot of ways, not only because we have the team members, but we automate about 500,000 to 750,000 tasks per month.
Wow.
And that's just mostly between marketing, sales, and ops. That has nothing to do with our inventory movements, the systems associated there, the dashboards and automations there. It's probably another 300,000. So we're at like 1 million something tasks. And it's the ability to think through all of that is a skill set. Now, the technical logic and conditional logic is where people hire Zap specialists and all that, but they just know how to speak API language for the most part. So if you hire someone like that, you have to map that stuff out anyways. So do it yourself in the first place, but map it out so that way that they can see the magnitude of the impact of that Zap step. And I think for me, as we systematize things, I always want things to come up to me. I don't have to go fetch the data. If we have the entire infrastructure where things run through, kind of like a channel, things run through, that then needs to have an ecosystem where it fires back up. If you're just creating straight line automations, when this happens and have all these things occur, you're not getting that feedback loop. You're just pushing things through a system and you're not evaluating it. So back to the point about ecom, hey, is your email marketing flows working better? What reports are going to give you the insight that this is working better for version 1 versus version 2, color 1, color 2, that kind of stuff. You have to have that come back up to you, or else you're just designing the iceberg beneath the waterline to not serve. It's just to be there and you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. I think a lot of it starts with truly valuing your time, doesn't it? Because once you put an associated value on your time, whether that be a monetary amount per hour, or even just like sitting down to do a task and thinking, why am I doing this? Which is something that I sometimes face. I think the piece that's still missing for me, and what I've kind of pulled from what you're saying there, is making the time to automate things to get back my time. So what I actually added to my calendar recently, I try to be quite scheduled in what I do and create almost habits and blocks what I'll do in certain times. So like a deep work block in the morning on high ROI tasks and things that only I can do. I also added in a block recently for automation and outsourcing where I spend maybe an hour or two a week where I'm just thinking about how I can buy back more time. And I've only added this in last week and started to try and add in simple things, but I really want to start evaluating all of the things that I'm doing and just completely strip back and only focus on the things that I truly need to do. Because I think, as you'll know as well, like decision fatigue is a thing. And also just I don't even want to be having to think about these tasks. I just want to automate them or outsource them where possible and have that feedback loop, like you're saying, to say, this happened, this has been done, and this was the outcome. That's all I want to be seeing is the numbers.
For sure. And a lot of times if you're the individual contributor or the startup entrepreneur, you may have had a prior job and you're like, these executives don't do any work, right? They're like, my boss, he's an asshole. He doesn't do anything. He just tells me what to do. Now, some, bosses can be like that. And of quite frankly, I can be very direct as well. So I'm sure I get some of that from time to time. But the reality is decision fatigue is real. And every minute second, every minute period of time or increment of time has to have an ROI. And so you're going to piss off a lot of people overall if you say, no, like I'm not going to go hang out at the bar or whatever. Like I don't drink, I don't do any of that kind of stuff. Don't party. I mean, I'll go have good times every once in a while, but the ROI of that activity needs to be adding to my mental health or social health and that kind of stuff, not for the sake of escaping a reality.
Mm-hmm.
So those pieces of time I look at as bite-sized increments of value. So what I did in the very beginning to help me understand is, the value of my time was lifetime gross profit to me, or lifetime gross income. Sure, you may go make $1 million with the agency. Like we talked about earlier, if you're left with 20% margins, 200 grand, how much of that are you really taking home? Cool. So 700 grand in costs, 100 grand to you, whatever, right? Whatever the margins are. Like, okay, if I work a full year and I make 100 grand, obviously the way that I'm thinking right now, and there's foundational years for sure, but once that's built, okay, there's ways that I'm thinking right now that aren't configured appropriately to see the bigger picture as to what I can do. So how do I retrain my thinking to give me a different outcome on an every 15-minute basis or an every hour basis? What reports and data would I need to have in front of me to monitor in order to actually understand the frequency of where we're going? I'll give you an example. Grant Cardone, when I was working there, massive sales floor, multiple offers, multiple businesses, multiple streams. So I learned how to build a portfolio company, modeling some of the things that he was doing. But the main thing is he gets a report every 15 minutes in each department on the key indicators every 15 minutes.
Wow.
So if I have an entire sales floor, I want to know how many dials are going out, how many connects are happening, how many sets or how many purchases are occurring every 15 minutes to monitor my sales guys. In front of that is the marketing. Can that flow essentially not capitulate or not cannibalize itself? Am I getting enough flow for the sales team, or do I need to dial back marketing so these guys can catch up? And it's a teeter-tottering effect. And so, for me personally, I had to look at my time every 15 minutes. So I had a spreadsheet. This was an exercise with Dan Martell. Buy Back Your Time is his book. I think it's a fantastic book. Everyone should read it. And you look at what are you doing every single 15 minutes? And I'm talking about like once you wake up, 15 minutes, bathroom piss, whatever, that kind of stuff, down to, hey, I was on social media for 7 minutes. Then I was on this for 4. I was just scrolling through and doing whatever. Because we are humans. We need feedback. We need communication. And entrepreneurs, we don't get that unless we buy masterminds, coaches, that kind of stuff. And you self-identify unless you have a consulting call. So if you can self-identify your feedback loops to be every 15 minutes and be like, dude, I was on social media when I woke up for the first 15 minutes of the day. If I see that enough and that's a habit I'm trying to break, it's going to piss me off. Like if I'm constantly being told that I'm on social media, or I'm constantly being told that I'm doing X, Y, Z, which I told myself I wouldn't do, it should piss you off to a point where then you get more confidence because you tackled that win. And the way we rate it is, a single $sign, 2, 3, 4, just like Yelp or whatever we use out here in Dubai, as to indicate what's the value of that task. Me on social media for 15 minutes, probably a low value task. Me analyzing social media ads of competitors, probably a 3 out of 4 on the $sign thing. A higher valuable task, same time, same platform, same thing, different intent.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at that on a minute level every 15 minutes. That's what I did for myself. The second thing is, which I would recommend to any entrepreneur that's reading this, especially if you're not an ops guy and you're not a finance person and you don't understand the importance of dashboards or how to execute on them. Don't worry. I didn't understand it in the beginning either. Didn't really think through it all. Is The Road Less Stupid. One of my favorite books. And at the end of every chapter, there's questions that you can start embodying to actually, repeat, say out loud, ingrain those into your mind, because then you'll start to think that way. And then you'll be able to self-select your problems that you solve later. So all this stuff, man, is really just predicated on what inputs are you giving yourself, because the outputs are going to occur. Your questions that you're asking yourself are going to drive the thoughts that you have, that then drive the actions that you have, which then determines your habits, which then determines your results, which then determines your legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So if that equation is broken, it's probably about the questions that you're asking yourself, which is derived by the inputs that you.
Yeah, amazing. I really, really like that. I think I need a couple of books to read, maybe. And also, I think one thing that can be difficult amongst all of the work that you're doing in general as an entrepreneur, and I guess in some ways, I don't want to say limited time that you have, but there's a finite amount of it, is also then adding into the mix of that what you're talking about, which is self-analyzing yourself, and then improving yourself, which I guess at its core is the most important thing because you're operating the business. But I think it's often something that's overlooked. If I'm thinking about my own day, and something I'm trying to make more time for is just to think, just to sit on the balcony, no agenda, before I start my day or halfway through my day, to just stop and think. And I'm trying to value that time as much as possible over what I would previously do, which is like, I just need to work, I just need to get this done, this is important, I need to focus on this. When a lot of these times I'll notice I'm prioritizing things that actually aren't even that important, and I'm putting a time frame to completion on it when it doesn't even necessarily really need one. So something I'm really trying to work on myself is mindset, removing any kind of negative thoughts, but also, I guess, self-analyzing more and making sure that I really do just focus on the higher ROI tasks. Saying that is one thing, but really, like what you're saying, analyzing my day and thinking like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of lying to myself. There's all these things I'm doing which aren't higher ROI tasks. So how can I eliminate them to buy back my time? And I think that will really be the shift in my business and the things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Is I know undoubtedly I'm wasting time in areas and I'm not as efficient as I could be. So
For sure.
I'd like to work on that. You mentioned analyzing every kind of 15 minutes or on 15-minute time blocks. How does that process work?
So the book, Dan Martell, he covers that pretty in depth. But the spreadsheet system is just to, write down every 15 minutes in a table. Like you have your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. When you wake up, put in what happened on your first 15 minutes, enter a cell, enter in the next cell. And you literally just list out all your tasks. For me, some of the things that helped me in my beginning, as an entrepreneur, my journey into that. So I came from a very scarcity driven mindset. We were poor. We didn't have money when we were growing up in just north of LA. So everything was fear based. So two things occur when you kind of have that upbringing. One, you naturally put more stuff on your plate if you're trying to get out because you don't believe in outsourcing or that anyone's going to come save you, which is a good, healthy side of it. The second thing that builds is the ability to put more stuff on your plate and to handle more stress and to handle more of it. It's actually something that I believe in for my companies is, hey, give the busiest person in the room more work to do because it's going to force them not only to get it done, but they're gonna have to think differently. So you're actually helping them grow by stressing them the fuck out. And I mean that by stress creates diamonds, pressure creates diamonds, or they'll snowflake out. So when I retired from marketing, when I was at Cardon's agency, I had so much shit on my plate.
Yeah.
But when I revisited that type of growth in my life and what I needed to change, I needed to build leverage, needed to build digital leverage, needed to build SOPs, processes, documents, overview videos, et cetera, to get everything out of my head onto paper so I can delegate it, train it, et cetera, and hold people to a standard of what I know success looks like in my relative, few years of doing all this. So the books that helped me, like I was mentioning, was, that stuff. I had to reprogram myself by reading As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. As you think, so you become. It's basically the premise of the book, but it's more of a philosophical approach. Second one was Beyond Positive Thinking by Dr. Robert B. Anthony. I think it's a book that every entrepreneur should read, regardless of, if you think you have a positive mindset or not. A lot of books in the positive mindset kind of stuff are rah-rah. They're just manifest, believe that. This is very tactical. And for logical entrepreneurs, people that are data-driven, it's no, I get it. Help me actually execute on that. Don't just tell me to manifest and that it's going to come from the ether of whatever.
Yeah.
I can't rely on that. I got to build that skill set myself. So the same thing with every 15 minutes, it's a discipline, just like the gym, just like your health, et cetera. But I will say that one thing that helped me was I hired a performance coach. And that performance coach is simply an accountability coach for, CEOs and founders. He was the top, person in our space. He worked with Ty Lopez, Sam Ovens, all the top guys. So I was like, all right, if it worked for them and they experienced it at a level that I haven't yet, let me see what he's got. And one of the best things I got out of it, I'll never forget it, is that the fastest way to make a Ferrari go faster is just to take whatever's out of the frunk, reduce the weight, reduce the cognitive load. So we actually scheduled every Friday thinking time, cleared the entire day and just let that be thinking. In the beginning, it was freaking weird.
Yeah.
Because my mind races, and I'm sure yours does as well as an entrepreneur, of what tactical things need to be done. But then when you can visualize and see what the stimulus is and where that came from, you can start identifying patterns. And it's a self exercise because every business is different. But if you can identify the patterns that your thinking is having and either turn those patterns off or change the way you were thinking about them, that starts to build that neuroplasticity to not be so rigid and fixated in how you're currently viewing your problems. So that for me gave me the space to then also look inward as to what was really occurring. I didn't really believe in energy chakras. I didn't believe in any of that kind of stuff. I didn't go down that route until later. But I first had to see, like, where is this energy coming from? Where is this thought coming from? Is it a actual rooted issue? Is it my ego saying a team member's not doing something right? If that's the case, did I give them the right training? You have to actually analyze and question every thought that you have about how you're doing things in order to actually identify where you're currently at. And that gives you the perspective. Then you can go seek out the new mentorship or the new coaching program or the course that you need to buy or the education that you need to obtain through books, et cetera. I mean, I have like 250 something books. I have a library at home, kind of like the studio is just filled with books and stuff. And it's really, really cool to look at how people think about things, how they analyze their energy, and then what book or what knowledge gives them the leverage to maximize that.
I think something that's really, really important is just thinking. And I like the idea of kind of taking time out to think. I read the book Deep Work, which is, I don't know if you read it, but the guy, I can't remember his name. I don't want to say the wrong name, but a big advocate of kind of just taking time away to conduct deep work, like you in a room with a pad and paper for a week, just actually kind of thinking and working. So I think maybe I need to revisit that as well. But I'm glad, based on the things that you've said, I'm glad to hear the things you've said, because I feel as though I'm working or I'm on the way to doing the right things and maybe being more analytical and truly thinking about what I'm doing and why. I think I just need to make more time to do that and maybe also conduct myself in a bit of a better way based on the books.
Well, the beautiful part of that is that you can self-identify into understanding that journey. A lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot more depth to entrepreneurs than people actually give them credit for. They'll ask them kind of bullshit questions like, what was the one thing that you did that changed your life? You know, like that kind of shit. And that's a surface level question. And you're not asking those, which is great. But what I'm saying is entrepreneurs can then identify through other entrepreneurs what things that they need to change or grow through, et cetera, by simply understanding what questions to ask. And the quality of your questions is going to determine the quality of your answers, which determines the quality of your results. So if you don't ask good questions to either try and gain perspective, or if you don't ask good questions to try and solve a problem, if it is tactical, then you're not going to get the answer. So it does start with that inner working, the feeling of how that question came up. What's the question? So it's actually a very high ROI task, kind of like content.
Yeah.
Content is a high ROI task, even though sometimes if you love content, you feel like you're just fucking around a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're not.
For sure. No, I really, really appreciate that and appreciate the feedback as well. Wow, I think we covered a lot in this podcast, even in just an hour. So an intro to yourself, your background, why you're here and how you're so qualified in what you do, how people could maybe bring a product or an info product to market, starting with mindset and market research and the psychology into, the product and the people that product serves, to then kind of building the funnel, analyzing the data, understanding finances, and then a big portion at the end on mindset. So Robert, I think we covered a huge amount there. Thank you very much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it. Honestly, even I've pulled a lot from this. So thank you. And I'm sure the audience will as well. Where can people find you, Robert? And if they want to, I don't know that you necessarily do like mentorship and coaching and things like that, but if people want to find out more about you and the services that you provide, where can they go to find that sort of thing?
Yeah, so you guys can go visit me on Instagram, the Robert J. Miller, on my website, therobertjmiller.com as well. And mostly I do everything through my Instagram. So if you want to get connected to coaching, we have a coaching program with the Modern Way Coaching.
Okay.
We do have, other offers as well. I do actually take on mostly private clients, but that kind of wavers depending on what's currently on my plate. We're in the middle of a launch right now for some other things. So I've actually denied some applications of putting them on a wait list. But when that opens back up, I'm sure we'll be able to, help a lot of people with that.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Robert, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely.